Hello, Gateway Kids. Josh here. It's so lovely to see all of you today. What a glorious Sunday it is. Now, I just want to start off by asking how your week's been. Like, what have you been up to? Now, why don't you just shout out really loud? Like really, really loud. Okay, ready? Go. Wow, you guys are loud, man. Now, me personally, I've had quite a boring week. I've been working, not as exciting as you guys, obviously, but then, I mean, I have been having showers on a daily basis. I don't know about you guys. I mean, I can smell you from here. Okay, so this week we are continuing on our part on people in the Bible that, even though they went through really hard times, they continued to trust in God. Now, today we're going to be looking at the story of Jonah. Now, Jonah was a prophet, and let's not lie, he was a bit of a rebellious one. Now, a prophet is someone who is inspiring, and also someone who speaks to God, hears from God, and then relays information, who listens to God and shares to other people what God has told them. Throughout the story, Jonah repeatedly gets angry at God for loving his enemies.
The story begins with God, who tells Jonah to go to Nineveh and preach against the evil things the city are doing. But Jonah turned round and said no. Instead, the man of God tried to run away from God. So he headed down to the port where they keep the boats and found one that was going to be sailing the furthest away in the opposite direction to where God wanted him to go. Jonah paid the sailors money for the ride and he got onto the boat. But he didn't stay on deck, he went down into the ship and fell asleep. Then the Lord sent great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose, so that the ship threatened to break up. But Jonah stayed asleep. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to their own gods, and they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. The sailors wanted to know why this horrible storm was happening, so the captain went to Jonah and said, "How can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish." Then the sailors said to each other, "Come, let us bet to find out who is responsible for this calamity." So they asked Jonah, "Tell us, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you?" He answered, "I am a Hebrew and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." This terrified them, and they asked, "What have you done?" Although they knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so. The sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, "What should we do to make the sea calm down for us?" "Pick me up and throw me into the sea," he replied, "and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you." Again, this was another plan of Jonah's. He didn't want to go where God had called him, so he tried escaping by going into the sea. Instead, the sailors did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, "Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, Lord, have done as you pleased." Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. As this happened, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, "In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths, into the very heart of the seas, and the current swirled me around. All your waves and breakers swept over me. I said, I have been banished from your sight. Yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me in forever. But you, Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say, salvation comes from the Lord. And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you. Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. Now Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on a sackcloth. When Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat down in the dust. This is the proclamation he issued in Nineveh. By the decree of the king and his nobles, do not let people or animals, herds or flocks, taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink, but let people and animals be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on God. Let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows? God may yet relent and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. When God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction he had threatened. But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? This is what I tried to stop by fleeing. I know that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it is better for me to die than to live. Can you believe that? Jonah would rather die than to live with a God who forgives and loves his enemies. But the Lord replied, Is it right for you to be angry? Jonah had gone out and sat down at a place east of the city. There he made himself a shelter, sat in its shade, and waited to see what would happen to the city. Then the Lord God provided a leafy plant and made it grow up over Jonah to give him shade for his head, to ease his discomfort. And Jonah was very happy about the plant. But at dawn the next day, God provided a worm which chewed the plant so that it withered. When the sun rose, God provided a scorching east wind, and the sun blazed on Jonah's head so that he grew faint. He wanted to die and said, "It would be better for me to die than to live." But God said to Jonah, "Is it right for you to be angry about the plant?" "It is," he said, "and I'm so angry I wish I was dead." God wanted to get through to Jonah. He wanted Jonah to question himself. You have been concerned about this plant, though you did not tend to it or make it grow. It sprang up overnight and died overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who cannot tell what is good and what is bad, and so many animals?
What a great story. Now, some of you might be wondering, why did it end there? It's a bit of a weird ending to a story, right? One of the key points for us to think about is, are we okay with God loving our enemies? It can be hard to love people and be kind to people that have not been kind to us. People who have hurt us and made us sad. But we need to be like God. We need to forgive our enemies and not get angry or be mean to them, like Jonah. Now, the book of Jonah is a really good story. It shows us how loving God is. Even when we try to run away and hide from God, like Jonah, God still loves us. And He will never leave us. We have to learn to obey God, even when He asks us to do stuff that we don't like. Now, to help you remember the story of Jonah, why don't you guys make yourself a big fish? Now, I want you guys to get really creative. I want to see paint, I want to see colour, I want to see glitter. And once you've finished your big fish, put it in a place where you're going to see it most. And so, by seeing it, you'll always remember the story of Jonah. Please feel free to send us your big fishes. We'd love to see them. As always, send your photos and your feedback to the Gateway phone number down below. Now, as we head into next week, why don't you ask God who you need to forgive or to show love to? Maybe you need to ask God for forgiveness. Maybe you've been hiding from Him or just disobeying Him or not doing what He's asked you to do. We can all pray and thank God that even when we're difficult and we don't necessarily listen to Him, He will always forgive us and always be there for us. Hope you guys have enjoyed the video today. Remember to stay safe, and I look forward to seeing all you guys soon. Bye.